Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Before I begin, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I find it comforting to know how far a story can travel. The story I'm about to tell you is one I never thought I'd have to share. It's about family, betrayal, and the cold, hard reality that sometimes the only person you can truly count on is yourself. My son sold my entire watch collection and left me alone in the house to travel to Paris with his wife. He thought he was just liquidating some assets for a vacation. What he didn't realize was that he was selling his future, his home, and any claim he ever had to my legacy. He thought I was just a sad old man. He learned, far too late, that I was the architect of his entire world, and I was about to tear it all down. It started, as these things often do, with a quiet house. I came home from my weekly lunch with some old friends, a simple pleasure I've allowed myself in retirement. The house felt different. Not just empty, as it often was when my son, Daniel, and his wife, Chloe, were out, but hollow. There was a stillness that prickled the back of my neck. I called out their names. Daniel? Chloe. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator answered. I walked through the living room and into my study, the place I consider my sanctuary. That's when I saw it. The large, velvet-lined watch case on the mahogany credenza was open, and it was empty. All 12 slots, which had held a lifetime of memories, were vacant. My heart didn't just sink, it plummeted, a stone dropping into a bottomless well. For a moment, I thought I'd been robbed. I felt a surge of adrenaline, my mind racing through the protocol of calling the police. But then I saw the note. A single white envelope propped against the empty case, with Dad scrawled on it in Daniel's familiar, lazy script. My hands trembled as I opened it. The words inside were simple, cheerful, and utterly devastating. Dad, it read, Chloe and I had the most amazing, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go to Paris. It was all very last minute. We needed some quick cash for flights and a really nice hotel, and we knew you never were these old things anyway. Think of it as an early inheritance. We'll bring you back a souvenir. Be back a month. Love, Dan and Chloe. I read it once, then twice, then a third time. The words wouldn't compute. My mind refused to accept the casual cruelty, the breathtaking entitlement contained in those few sentences. Old things, he had called them old things. Each of those watches was a chapter of my life. There was the Omega Speedmaster I bought myself after closing the first major deal of my career, a deal nobody thought I could land. There was the Rolex Submariner I received from my partners when I sold my logistics company, a company Daniel and Chloe believed was a simple trucking firm I'd merely managed. They had no idea I had built it from a single van into a national powerhouse, and that the sale had made me a wealthy man many times over. I lived simply because my wife, Eleanor, and I believed in humility and the value of hard work, a lesson we had apparently failed to impart to our only son. And then there was the most important one, the Patek Philippe Calatrava. It was the last gift Eleanor gave me before she passed away. She had saved for years to buy it for our 25th anniversary. She presented it to me at a small dinner, her eyes sparkling. So you can count every happy second we have left, she had whispered. And now it was gone. Sold, most likely for a fraction of its value, to fund a month of croissants and selfies by the Eiffel Tower. Daniel hadn't just sold a piece of metal and glass. He had sold his mother's last gift to me. He had liquidated a memory. He had put a price tag on our love and found it sufficient for airfare and a hotel suite. The first 2 days were a blur of grief. The hollow feeling in the house became a physical ache in my chest. I wandered from room to room, touching the furniture, looking at photos of Eleanor, of Daniel, the little boy. A boy I had given everything to. I had paid for his university education, which he barely completed. I had bought him his first car and his second and the one he was driving now. I had gotten him his cushy marketing job through an old friend, a job he believed he had earned through his own brilliant interview skills. And for the past 5 years, since he married Chloe, I had allowed them to live in my house, this large, beautiful home that Eleanor and I had built together. They paid no rent, no utilities, no property taxes. I even gave him a supplementary credit card tied to one of my accounts, which I topped up with a generous allowance every month, an allowance he smugly referred to as his trust fund disbursements. I had done all of this hoping that one day he would mature, that he would see my generosity not as an obligation, but as a gift. I had mistaken his dependence for family connection. I see that now. He didn't see me as his father. He saw me as a landlord, a banker, an endlessly renewable resource. My kindness had been mistaken for weakness, and my quiet life for irrelevance. On the third day, something inside me shifted. I was sitting in my study, staring at the empty watch case, the thief's note still lying beside it. The grief was still there, a cold, heavy stone in my gut. But something else was rising through it, a slow, burning anger. It wasn't a hot, explosive rage. It was a cold, clarifying fire. I picked up a photo of Eleanor from my desk. Her smile was a beacon, as always. I remembered what she used to say to me when my partners tried to take advantage of my good nature in the early days of our business. "Be a lamb in your heart, my love," she'd say, "but a lion in the negotiation. Never let them mistake your kindness for a lack of teeth." In that moment, the dam of my sorrow broke, and a river of pure, cold resolve flooded in. Enough was enough. Daniel and Chloe had not just disrespected me. They had desecrated the memory of his mother. They had danced on the grave of our family's values. They saw me as a relic, a piece of old furniture in their house. It was time to remind them that I was not a tenant in their lives. I was the foundation of their entire existence, and a foundation can be removed. My first call was to my lawyer, Arthur Henderson. Arthur has managed my estate for over 30 years and is one of the few people who knows the full extent of my wealth. He's a sharp, no-nonsense man who despises entitlement more than I do. I didn't even have to explain the whole story. I started with, "Arthur, Daniel sold Eleanor's Patek," and he simply replied, "I'll clear my afternoon. What do you need?" I drove to his downtown office, a place of quiet, wood-paneled power. I laid it all out for him. The note, the empty case, the years of unchecked avarice. He listened patiently, his steepled fingers resting on his chin. When I was finished, he didn't offer condolences. He offered a strategy. "So," he said, his voice calm and precise, "we dismantle. Legally, cleanly, and completely. Let's list the assets." We went down the list, item by item, a methodical deconstruction of the life I had built for my son. First, the house. It was solely in my name, free and clear. Daniel had often talked about when we inherit the house, as if it were a foregone conclusion. Arthur drew up an immediate eviction notice. It would give him 30 days to vacate the premises from the moment it was served. "We'll have a process server meet them at the airport," Arthur suggested. I shook my head. "No, let them get all the way home. Let them stand on the porch with their key that no longer works. I want the lesson to be absolute." Arthur nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. He understood. Next, the finances. I had the bank statements with me. I pointed to the supplementary credit card, the one Chloe used for her endless online shopping sprees, and the joint account I funded for their daily expenses. "Cancel it all," I said. Arthur made a note. "We'll call your private banker right after this. We'll have the card deactivated immediately and your name removed from the joint account, which will effectively freeze it as it has no other source of funds. All automatic transfers will cease." The thought of them in a fancy Parisian restaurant, their card declined, brought a bitter taste in my mouth. It wasn't joy. It was the sterile satisfaction of a necessary, painful equation finally being solved. Then the cars. A late-model BMW for him, a luxury SUV for her. Both were registered and titled solely in my name. I had paid for them in cash. "We'll report them as unauthorized use if they are not returned to your possession within 48 hours of the eviction notice," Arthur stated. "Or you could simply have them towed from the driveway once they're back." I opted for the latter. Cleaner. Less room for argument. Finally, the most delicate piece, Daniel's job. I had never told him that the CEO of the company he worked for, Robert Connolly, was one of my oldest and dearest friends. Daniel thought he was a rising star in the marketing department. The truth was his performance was mediocre at best, and Robert had kept him on as a personal favor to me. I was hesitant about this step. A man's livelihood is a serious thing. But then I thought of Eleanor's watch, and my hesitation vanished. I had given him the opportunity, the safety net. He had used the security I provided to betray me. He didn't deserve the net anymore. I wouldn't ask Robert to fire him. That would be petty. Instead, I would simply withdraw my support. I would call Robert and explain the situation, and I would tell him that from this day forward, Daniel's employment should be judged on his merits alone. We both knew what the outcome of that would be. Leaving Arthur's office, I felt lighter than I had in years. The plan was in motion. It was a terrible, necessary thing, like setting a broken bone. The pain was sharp, but it was the only path to healing. The next 3 weeks were a study in cold efficiency. I made the call to my banker, a pleasant woman named Ms. Albright. When I explained that I needed to immediately cancel a supplementary card and freeze an account due to a family matter involving theft, her professional tone became one of genuine concern. The card was deactivated before I even hung up the phone. 2 days later, I received the first text from Daniel. "Hey, Dad. Weird thing. My card got declined trying to buy museum tickets. Must be a glitch. Can you check on it?" I read the message and placed the phone face down on the counter. I did not reply. Over the next few days, the messages grew more frequent, more frantic. They came in a predictable pattern: confusion, then annoyance, then outright panic. "Dad, the card isn't working anywhere. Chloe tried hers too. We had to use our emergency savings for dinner. What's going on?" Silence from me. "Seriously, Dad, this isn't funny. We need to pay the hotel bill in a few days. The account says zero balance. Did you move the money?" Call me. Silence. "Pick up the phone, Dad. What the hell is going on? We're stranded here." I watched the messages come in with a strange sense of detachment. It was like watching a movie where I already knew the ending. Meanwhile, Chloe's social media feed told a different story. In the early days of their trip, before the money ran out, her posts were a nauseating parade of conspicuous consumption. Photos of them clinking champagne glasses with the Eiffel Tower in the background, captioned, "Living our best life." Hashtag Paris, hashtag blessed. A picture of her with a dozen shopping bags from Chanel and Dior, captioned, "A little retail therapy. Danny is the best husband." I looked at those pictures, at the smug, self-satisfied smiles on their faces, and I felt nothing but the cold certainty of my course. They were celebrating on the ruins of my heart. They were wearing my memories as accessories. Back home, I began the process of cleansing my house. I hired a professional moving company, not just a couple of guys with a truck, but a white glove service. I directed them to Daniel and Chloe's master suite. "Pack everything," I instructed them. "Clothes, books, electronics, toiletries. Every last thing. Treat it all with care." They wrapped Chloe's expensive shoes in tissue paper and carefully boxed up Daniel's video game consoles. I wanted there to be no accusation of malice or destruction. I was not a monster. I was an administrator of consequences. All their worldly possessions were packed into 63 boxes and transported to a climate-controlled storage unit. I paid for the first month's rent in advance. I placed the key and the rental agreement in an envelope, ready to be handed to them. Walking into their empty room was surreal. The indentations in the carpet where their bed had been were the only sign they had ever lived there. The house felt quiet again, but this time it wasn't the hollow silence of loss. It was the clean, peaceful silence of a space that was finally completely my own. My call to Robert Connolly was the hardest part of the plan. He was a good man, and I was putting him in an awkward position. I told him the whole story, my voice heavy. "Robert, I finished. I am not asking you to fire him. I am simply informing you that my recommendation is withdrawn. He is on his own now. Judge him by his work and his work alone." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Frank," he said finally, his voice full of regret, "to be honest with you, his work has been subpar for months. I've kept him on because of you. Without your protection, let's call it. He won't last the quarter, I understand," I said. Let the chips fall where they may. It was a painful but necessary severance. Daniel had to learn that the world does not run on favors you haven't earned. The day of their return arrived. Arthur had confirmed their flight details. They would be landing at 2:15 p.m. I had the locksmith come at noon to change every lock on the house, including the garage and the back gate. At 3:30, I was sitting not in my own home, but in Arthur's conference room, which had a large window overlooking the street in front of my house 2 blocks away. We had a clear, if distant, view. I held a cup of coffee, my hands perfectly steady. Right on cue, a taxi pulled up to the curb. Daniel and Chloe got out, looking haggard and furious. They were bickering, dragging their suitcases up the walkway. I watched as Daniel stuck his key in the new lock. He tried it, jiggled it, then tried it again with more force. His confusion was visible even from this distance. Chloe tried her key with the same result. The frustration mounted. Daniel started banging on the door, shouting my name. Just then, a man in a crisp suit, Arthur's process server, walked calmly up the driveway. He said a few words to Daniel and handed him a large manila envelope. Daniel snatched it, tore it open, and pulled out the papers. I watched his posture change as he read. His shoulders slumped, his angry bravado deflating like a punctured balloon. He showed the papers to Chloe, whose hands flew to her mouth in a gesture of theatrical shock. Then the rage returned, tenfold. He pulled out his phone. A moment later, my own phone, sitting on the polished conference table, began to vibrate. I looked at Arthur. He nodded. I answered and put on speakerphone. "What did you do?" Daniel's voice was a raw, distorted scream. "What the hell is this? An eviction notice? You can't kick US out. This is our house." In the background, I could hear Chloe wailing. "He's lost his mind. The old man has finally lost his mind." I took a sip of my coffee before I replied, my voice as calm and steady as a frozen lake. "Hello, Daniel. No, you're mistaken. This has never been your house. It has always been my house. The house your mother and I built." "I don't care," he yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. "You can't just throw us out on the street. Where are we supposed to go? Where's all our stuff?" "Your belongings," I said, enunciating each word with precision, "are safe. They have been professionally packed and moved to a storage unit. The address and the key are in an envelope that my lawyer will provide. I have paid for the first month. After that, it is your responsibility, just as everything else is now your responsibility." There was a stunned silence on the other end. He was processing, trying to comprehend the sheer totality of his new reality. "What are you talking about?" he finally whispered. "I'm talking about consequences, Daniel." I continued, my voice devoid of emotion. "I'm talking about the car you drive, which is registered to me and will be towed from my driveway within the hour. I'm talking about the bank accounts I funded, which are now closed to you. I'm talking about the job that my friend gave you, where you will now have to stand on your own 2 feet and prove you are worth the salary you are paid. I suspect you will find that to be a significant challenge." "Because of the watches?" he sputtered, the disbelief in his voice palpable. "You're doing all this because of some stupid old watches." That was the moment the ice in my veins finally cracked and a flash of heat broke through. "Stupid old watches," I repeated, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "One of those stupid old watches was the last thing your mother ever gave me. You didn't just sell some of my things, Daniel. You sold a piece of her. You took a symbol of her love for me, and you sold it to pay for champagne and designer handbags. You valued your vacation more than you valued her memory, more than you valued me. You saw me as an ATM and a free hotel. You were wrong. This is not a punishment, son. It is a correction. You wanted to be treated like an adult, free to make your own financial decisions. Congratulations. Your wish has been granted. You are on your own. Do not call me again." I ended the call and placed the phone back on the table. The silence in Arthur's office was absolute. The aftermath was exactly as I had predicted. They spent a few weeks in a cheap motel, burning through whatever cash they had left. They called my sister, my cousins, Daniel's grandparents, trying to spin a tale of senile old father who had thrown them out for no reason. But the story of the watches, especially Eleanor's watch, got out. Family support, which they had counted on, evaporated. No one would lend them money. No one would take them in. They had shown their true character, and it was ugly. Within a month, as Robert had predicted, Daniel was fired from his job for poor performance and insubordination. The pressure of having to actually produce results was too much for him. Chloe, who had married for a comfortable lifestyle, did not stick around for the hardship. She left him, filing for divorce, and citing his financial irresponsibility. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Daniel, I heard through the grapevine, is now working a minimum wage job and sharing a cramped apartment with 2 roommates. He has tried to contact me a few times, apologetic, pleading emails. I have not replied. The door he closed is not one I am willing to reopen. As for me, I sold the big house. It was full of too many ghosts, tainted by too many bad memories. I bought a beautiful, modern penthouse condominium downtown with a stunning view of the city skyline. It's smaller, easier to manage, and it's mine. I used a significant portion of the money from the house sale and my other investments to establish the Eleanor Vance Foundation, a charitable organization that provides scholarships and startup grants to bright, deserving young people who lack the financial resources to pursue their dreams. I find a profound sense of peace in helping those who are grateful for the opportunity, instead of wasting it on one who felt entitled to it. I even started collecting watches again. I recently acquired a beautiful A. Lang & Son, a testament to resilience and artistry. Each new piece I add is not a memory of the past, but a promise for my future. A future built on self-respect and the hard-earned lesson that while you should always be kind, you must never, ever allow that kindness to be mistaken for weakness. The price of that lesson was high, but the peace I have now is priceless. So that's my story. I'd be interested to hear what you all think. Was I too harsh? Or was it a just and necessary end to a lifetime of disrespect? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you for listening.